Okay, well, let's continue on here. We're in the middle of there's three back and forths with Job and his friends. We're at the end of the second back and forth with the third friend, Zophar. He is going to talk to Job now. So we will read Zophar and Job's comments. So that'll be 20, 21, and 20 and 21. So we'll read that. And one of the things that someone was asking me about Job the other night, and I've been really, like, as we've been kind of going through this Bible study on Job, I've been really kind of thinking about something with it. And the thing that's really struck me with this reading is Job and his friends are all saying the correct things. They're all quoting common knowledge about God. They're all quoting scriptures. They're all saying the right things, but it's incredibly unhelpful. You know, like that's, and I think that's, and I feel like there's a sermon series kind of brewing with in here, and like, because I think it's easy to fall into that trap of feeling self-righteous about yourself and just quoting a Bible verse to someone and like, well, I told him the truth, you know. That's what Job's friends are doing, and they're completely unhelpful, you know. And in Job too, he's saying a lot of correct things, but we read his stuff and we're kind of like, Job, you know, like, and kind of feeling uncomfortable with it. So I think this book is asking us to have wisdom in something else, you know, to have wisdom that's not just based around this, like, around just quoting scriptures, allowing something bigger to be at play, especially when we deal with suffering and the suffering of our friends. So we'll begin with chapter 20 and we'll go through 21. Let's see here. So we'll share the screen. We'll hit this button. We'll optimize it for video. And we'll share. And then here we go. Midge and Ed, let me know if you have any problems hearing.
Then Zophar the Naamathite answered,
Therefore, my anxious thoughts make me answer, because of the turmoil within me. I have heard the rebuke that reproaches me, and the spirit of my understanding causes me to answer. Do you not know this of old, since man was placed on earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite is but for a moment? Though his haughtiness mounts up to the heavens, and his head reaches to the clouds, yet he will perish forever like his own refuse. Those who have seen him will say, Where is he? He will fly away like a dream and not be found. Yes, he will be chased away like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will see him no more, nor will his place behold him anymore. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his hands will restore his wealth. His bones are full of his youthful vigor, but it will lie down with him in the dust. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, and he hides it under his tongue, though he spares it and does not forsake it, but still keeps it in his mouth, yet his food in his stomach turns sour. It becomes cobra venom within him. He swallows down riches and vomits them up again. God casts them out of his belly. He will suck the poison of cobras. The viper's tongue will slay him. He will not see the streams, the rivers flowing with honey and cream. He will restore that for which he labored and will not swallow it down. From the proceeds of business, he will get no enjoyment, for he has oppressed and forsaken the poor. He has violently seized a house which he did not build. Because he knows no quietness in his heart, he will not save anything he desires. Nothing is left for him to eat, therefore his well-being will not last. In his self-sufficiency, he will be in distress. Every hand of misery will come against him. When he is about to fill his stomach, God will cast on him the fury of his wrath and will rain it on him while he is eating. He will flee from the iron weapon. A bronze bow will pierce him through. It is drawn and comes out of the body. Yes, the glittering point comes out of his gall. Terrors come upon him. Total darkness is reserved for his treasures. An unfanned fire will consume him. It shall go ill with him who is left in his tent. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. The increase of his house will depart, and his goods will flow away in the day of his wrath. This is the portion from God for a wicked man, the heritage appointed to him by God.
Then Job answered,
Listen carefully to my speech, and let this be your consolation. Bear with me that I may speak, and after I have spoken, keep mocking. As for me, is my complaint against man? And if it were, why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be astonished. Put your hand over your mouth. Even when I remember, I am terrified, and trembling takes hold of my flesh. Why do the wicked live and become old? Yes, become mighty in power. Their descendants are established with them in their sight, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull breeds without failure, their cow calves without miscarriage. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They sing to the tambourine and harp, and rejoice to the sound of the flute. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Yet they say to God, Depart from us, for we do not desire the knowledge of your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit do we have if we pray to him? Indeed, their prosperity is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. How often is the lamp of the wicked put out? How often does their destruction come upon them? The sorrows God distributes in his anger. They are like straw before the wind, and like chaff that a storm carries away. They say, God lays up one's iniquity for his children. Let him recompense him, that he may know it. Let his eyes see his destruction, and let him drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what does he care about his household after him, when the number of his months is cut in half? Can anyone teach God knowledge, since he judges those on high? One dies in his full strength, being wholly at ease and secure. His pails are full of milk, and the marrow of his bones is moist. Another man dies in the bitterness of his soul, never having eaten with pleasure. They lie down alike in the dust, and worms cover them. Look, I know your thoughts and the schemes with which you would wrong me. For you say, Where is the house of the prince? And where is the tent, the dwelling place of the wicked? Have you not asked those who travel the road? And do you not know their signs? For the wicked are reserved for the day of doom. They shall be brought out on the day of wrath. Who condemns his way to his face? And who repays him for what he has done? Yet he shall be brought to the grave, and a vigil kept over the tomb. The clods of the valley shall be sweet to him. Everyone shall follow him, as countless have gone before him. How then can you comfort me with empty words, since falsehood remains in your answers?
Then Eliphaz.
All right. So let's, before we discuss Job, let's discuss his friend there in chapter 20. Did anything stand out to you in that chapter 20? The in chapter 20, I have my Jewish study Bible here. It's very interesting perspective on Job and here. But they said that Zophar here has 3 points, and that one of them is the first one. They say is that the happiness of the wicked does not last. Now, if we remember what Job says, we'll point that out here in a second, but he attacks that very severely like that. So like verses 5 through 9 is basically this whole thing that's like the happiness of the wicked does not last. Kind of sounds like a karma thing and all that. And then the second one, it starts with verse 10. It's like the wicked will not be able to hold on to their ill-gotten gains. So it's kind of a similar idea. And then the third part, he says, and God will inflict one or the other of several calamities of fates on him. And so Zophar is kind of saying that's like, hey, this isn't going to last, and you're going to be hit by, according to verse 13, the cobra is going to get you, and not verse 13, verse 16, the cobra is going to get you, and all those things because you've been so evil there. And then the way he kind of ends it up with me is verse 26 and kind of following. It kind of slowly kind of gets into this, but it really sounds like judgment, like kind of end of days type of thing. It says like total darkness is reserved for his treasures, and unfanned fire will consume him. It will go ill with him who is left in his tent. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. Like it's this whole idea. Verse 29 was, this is the portion of God for a wicked man, the heritage appointed to him by God. It's just, it sounds like when, like, you've ever quoted Revelation to somebody. It's like, oh, you guys are all wicked, you're gonna get destroyed. Like it has that same kind of ring to it, And I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts about any of this?
John and I keep saying, with all the wickedness you see in the world, when are they going to get their just reward?
yeah. And it reminds us all of that being said, And then what you're saying is kind of Job's response. It's like, hey, this doesn't seem to be the case. The wicked just keep on getting wickeder.
And I got a footnote here. It says, what Zophar missed is the judgment of these sins. May that come in the lifetime of a sinner. Punishment may be deferred until the last day of judgment.
Yeah.
And sinners will be eternally cut off from God. We should not be impressed with the success and power of evil people. God's judgment on them is certain.
Yeah.
What gets me out of all three of his so-called friends is the fact that they never admit that they sin.
Yeah. It's very
holier than thou art.
Yeah. So and that's good.
To be perfect. Everyone dies.
And I really like Job's response. Yeah. I really like Job's response, and that he, like, verse 7 kind of says it pretty well here in chapter 21. Chapter 21, verse 7 is, why do the wicked live and become old? Yes, become mighty in power. Like, he's basically saying, it's like, hey, just look at the world around you. Like, what you're saying isn't correct, Zophar. Like, it's kind of interesting how you definitely see an evolution of the friends and of Job, and their, Job has been the whole time. It's like, if I can just speak to God, like, let me speak to him. But he's definitely getting more entrenched. He's like, hey, this whole world isn't run by any kind of fairness that I understand, and that's kind of what Job is saying through here. Verse 14 stood out to me. Yet they say to God, depart from us, for we do not desire the knowledge of your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit do we have to pray to him? Like, I feel like I've heard that said, in other places. And Job is very, very angry here.
This one says instead of who, it says, what is the Almighty? Yeah.
What, why? None of this seems fair, right? Verse 16 says, indeed, their prosperity is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. Like, is this whole idea of, like, these wicked are just getting away with everything. It's how often is the lamp of the wicked put out? Like, how often does the destruction come upon us? Like, the sorrows God distributes in his anger. Like, this never happens. Like, he goes, I was good. Why did this happen to me? Yeah. Why are things this way? And then the one that really stuck out to me was verse kind of 23 and 24. One dies in his full strength, being wholly at ease and secure. His pails are full of milk, and his marrow of his bones is moist. And another man dies in the bitterness of his soul, never having eaten with pleasure. And worms are just covering him. That one stood out to me because it sounds like Ecclesiastes to me. It sounds like meaningless, everything is meaningless. Everything is just vapor, and I don't understand any of this. Like that, like that's, and I think he's being very honest with himself here about how he's feeling in this. And I think that's why this book is kind of brilliant, is there's a veneer that's just not there in this dialogue with Job right now and with his friends. I don't know. Anyone have any thoughts before we go?
Somewhere in there it says, can anyone teach God?
Oh, yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember seeing that one too. Oh, that's verse 22. And that's right when he's kind of saying everything is just meaningless. I mean, look at this stuff. What's going on? I don't know. Anything else? All right, let's go on and we'll read 22, 23, and 24. All right, here we go. And Ed, it sounds good and all that?
Everything's good.
All right, good. Good deal. All right, well, we'll continue on. Here we go.
Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered,
Can a man be profitable to God, though he who is wise may be profitable to himself? Is it any pleasure to the Almighty that you are righteous? Or is it gain to him that you make your ways blameless? Is it because of your fear of him that he corrects you and enters into judgment with you? Is not your wickedness great, and your iniquity without end? For you have taken pleasures from your brother for no reason, and stripped the naked of their clothing. You have not given the weary water to drink, and you have withheld bread from the hungry. But the mighty man possessed the land, and the honorable man dwelt in it. You have sent widows away empty, and the strength of the fatherless was crushed. Therefore, snares are all around you, and sudden fear troubles you, or darkness so that you cannot see. And an abundance of water covers you. Is not God in the height of heaven? And see the highest stars, how lofty they are. And you say, what does God know? Can he judge through the deep darkness? Thick clouds cover him, so that he cannot see, and he walks above the circle of heaven. Will you keep to the old way which wicked men have trod, who were cut down before their time, whose foundations were swept away by a flood? They said to God, depart from us. What can the Almighty do to them? Yet he filled their houses with good things, but the counsel of the wicked is far from me. The righteous see it and are glad, and the innocent laugh at them. Surely our adversaries are cut down, and the fire consumes their remnant. Now acquaint yourself with him, and be at peace. Thereby good will come to you. Receive, please, instruction from his mouth, and lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be built up. You will remove iniquity far from your tents. Then you will lay your gold in the dust, and the gold of Ophir among the stones of the brooks. Yes, the Almighty will be your gold and your precious silver. For then you will have your delight in the Almighty, and lift up your face to God. You will make your prayer to him. He will hear you, and you will pay your vows. You will also declare a thing, and it will be established for you. So light will shine on your ways. When they cast you down and you say exaltation will come, then he will save the humble person. He will even deliver one who is not innocent. Yes, he will be delivered by the purity of your hands.
Then Job answered,
Even today my complaint is bitter. My hand is listless because of my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat. I would present my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in his great power? No. But he would take note of me. There the upright could reason with him, and I would be delivered forever from my judge. Look, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. When he works on the left hand, I cannot behold him. When he turns to the right hand, I cannot see him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. My foot is held fast to his steps. I have kept his way and not turned aside. I have not departed from the commandment of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. But he is unique, and who can make him change? And whatever his soul desires, that he does. For he performs what is appointed for me, and many such things are with him. Therefore, I am terrified at his presence. When I consider this, I am afraid of him. For God made my heart weak, and the Almighty terrifies me, because I was not cut off from the presence of darkness, and he did not hide deep darkness from my face. Since times are not hidden from the Almighty, why do those who know him see not his days? Some remove landmarks. They seize flocks violently and feed on them. They drive away the donkey of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox as a pledge. They push the needy off the road. All the poor of the land are forced to hide. Indeed, like wild donkeys in the desert, they go out to their work searching for food. The wilderness yields food for them and for their children. They gather their fodder in the field and glean in the vineyard of the wicked. They spend the night naked without clothing and have no covering in the cold. They are wet with the showers of the mountains and huddle around the rock for want of shelter. Some snatch the fatherless from the breast and take a pledge from the poor. They cause the poor to go naked without clothing, and they take away the sheaves from the hungry. They press out oil within their walls and tread wine presses, yet suffer thirst. The dying groan in the city, and the souls of the wounded cry out, yet God does not charge them with wrong. There are those who rebel against the light. They do not know its ways, nor abide in its paths. The murderer rises with the light. He kills the poor and needy, and in the night he is like a thief. The eye of the adulterer waits for the twilight, saying, no eye will see me, and he disguises his face. In the dark, they break into houses which they mark for themselves in the daytime. They do not know the light, for the morning is the same to them as the shadow of death. If someone recognizes them, they are in the terrors of the shadow of death. They should be swift on the face of the waters. Their portion should be cursed in the earth, so that no one would turn into the way of their vineyards. As drought and heat consume the snow waters, so the grave consumes those who have sinned. The womb should forget him. The worm should feed sweetly on him. He should be remembered no more, and wickedness should be broken like a tree. For he preys on the barren who do not bear, and does no good for the widow. But God draws the mighty away with his power. He rises up, but no man is short of life. He gives them security, and they rely on it. Yet his eyes are on their ways. They are exalted for a little while, then they are gone. They are brought low. They are taken out of the way like all others. They dry out like the heads of grain. Now, if it is not so, who will prove me a liar and make my speech worth nothing?
Okay. Stop the sharing. Okay. All right. So before we get into Job's stuff, let's talk about Eliphaz's comments. And again, with Eliphaz's comments, the Jewish Bible says that there's three things going on again here. And the first one starts at verse 2, and it's that he mocks Job's desire to litigate with God. In the second, in verse 12, it says that he counters Job's argument that God is too remote from the earth to notice what is going on among the wicked. And then in the third, which begins with verse 21, he urges Job to return to God in piety, assuring him that as a just deity, he will bless him again. So the things that kind of stood out to me in this one is like verse 6. He's really like accusing Job of like stealing from the poor. You know,
So personal.
yeah, like you've taken pledges from your brother for no reason. You've stripped the naked of their clothing, and you've not given the weary water to drink, and you have withheld bread from the hungry. But the mighty man possessed the land, and an honorable man dwelt in it, and you have set widows away empty, and the strength of the fatherless was crushed. Like Like that's quite the accusation against Job. You know, like that's it.
And my footnote says in his previous speech, he was general, but in this one, he gets very specific.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
That Job has done.
Yeah, like that's very much like, hey, Job, you were wealthy, and yet people were still being crushed around you, and all of that. I guess it's very, very pointed, very pointed. Let's see. And then I think it's interesting, starting with verse 12, about how he starts talking about God being so remote, you know, God being so away, you know, like, what is verse 13 is like, what does God know that he can judge through the deep darkness? You know, those thick clouds, they cover him. How can he see through all those clouds? That's right. That was interesting to me, that he was like, why do you think God would be so involved intricately here? And, you know, as we're getting closer to God talking, that's like, God kind of shows a completely different understanding of how the world works than what's being said here about him. Because Job is kind of saying the same thing. He's saying, like, why do the wicked prosper? You know, like, it's like, it doesn't feel like you're here right now. You know, like that's
searching for where is God in all this?
Yeah. And that's something that I'm kind of seeing, is that everyone is kind of like, well, if things aren't going the way that I think they should be going, you know, then that means you're not here, type of thing.
Where is there someplace before this chronologically in the Bible where his three so-called friends had heard the words, "Don't judge lest you be judged"? I get a lot of that. Wow, that friend does three execution.
Oh yeah. Like that's
one of the comments in this Bible is that people in those days believed that the earth was flat.
Yeah.
And there was a big dome over it.
Yeah.
And God walked on top of the dome.
Yeah.
And he would open a window and rain would fall or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But he was remote. He wasn't anywhere near where these poor, lousy people were on earth.
Yeah. I mean, they when the Bible was written, they definitely believed that the earth was flat and all that stuff. I have some flat earth friends, and they quote the Bible to prove all their stuff.
Yeah. Joanne's son John has some friends that he works with that just spout that off all the time.
Yeah. And I think Job is actually kind of good for us there, because the way I'm reading Job right now is like, I'm just amazed, because this is kind of the first time I've really read the Friends. I've always just kind of blasted through it, and like how correct, quotation fingers, everything is. You know, that it's, I can see myself in a lot of these things that I've said over the years, you know, like, and it's how they're putting this correctness together that is not good, you know? And I was like, oh man, like that's fascinating. And it's like the flat earth people, you know, that they're quoting the good and correct scriptures, but they're taking them and making them say something that they weren't meant to say. And then that's, let's see here.
You're taking somebody who's already discouraged and making them
Yeah. I wrote, like, from verse 21 to the end there, I wrote a note that said, everything here is Eliphaz saying to Job, if you just do this, everything will work out. It's like, as we're kind of going through, I was like, oh my gosh, he's just, if you just, this whole section, like, if you just do this, if you just do that, you know, like that's, and that ends with like verse 29 and 30, when they cast you down and say exaltation will come, then he will save the humble person. He will even deliver one who is not innocent. And he will be delivered by the purity of your hands.
Return to God by admitting your sins and you'll get all your wealth back.
Yeah. Like that's like if you just and that's man, like when I'm frustrated with somebody, I realize where I say if you just, a lot, and that's I don't know, yeah, that's I see a lot of my unhealth in the friends. That's probably why I'm amazed. I'm amazed. Yeah. So, all right, and we get into Job, and in chapter 23, and in chapter 23, it really, I wrote a note that said that Job is desperately seeking justice. Like he's really looking for justice and what God can give him and what he can get and so that's really just what this sounds like. And his friend is accusing him of like, you were the definition of injustice, Job. And now he's like, well, like I'm just looking for it now.
Sounds like he just, let's go to court. We'll settle this.
Yeah. We'll settle this right here and now. I was really taken aback by 24 here. I wanted to get to 23:15. I'm sorry. I had made a note there. 23:15 is kind of talking about this justice stuff is, therefore I'm terrified of his presence. When I consider this, I'm afraid of him. For God has made my heart weak and the Almighty terrifies me. Like that's kind of in the midst of that seeking justice. He's scared that God isn't just.
That reminds me of Adam.
Adam, being scared in the that's a good point too. That's a good point. Then the next section is we're sitting there reading this in chapter 24, and I was like, this sounds like a poem, like an epic poem, because it starts getting into like, that these people are trying so hard out in the wilderness, they're trying to make it on another thing, and then somebody comes and takes it all away from them. They like verse 6 is they gather and fodder in the field and glean in the vineyard and yada, yada, yada. And they're trying so hard. And then some snatch the fatherless from the breast, like that's, and it's like this poem about just how the world doesn't seem right, and I think like that sounds like a current cry as we look around at the precipice of warfare, with the Ukraine thing and all of that. And it's almost like we say similar cries to that. It's like, oh, come on, this doesn't make any sense. As we look at the economies going down and up, and it seems like that the rich are able to capitalize off of that better than the common type of thing, and it sounds like what Job is saying here. It sounds like a similar thing where the friend was a very direct attack on Job. Job is like, hey, like if you just look around, it seems like this is just everywhere. Yeah.
There was a gentleman at Walmart this morning when I picked up my groceries. Mm-hmm. He was sitting there in his vehicle when I pulled in.
Yeah.
And they brought out my groceries, put in my car. He's still sitting there. And the poor young girl looks over at him and he starts berating this poor girl because he didn't get his groceries fast enough. Come on.
Yeah. Like that's.
I just sat there and said, be patient. My goodness. I'll wait.
And and so some people's children is what I say. Some people's, no matter how old you are, some people's children. They in verse 12 is the dying groan in the city, and the souls of the wounded cry out, yet God does not charge them with wrong. And that's just that it's like, why is this all messed up here? why is this all messed up? It's kind of seems to be where Job is. And I think we can feel that. Okay. Anyone have any thoughts on any of that as we're kind of going through?
Somebody discouraged. Don't let them read about it.
And I think that's why this is in that wisdom literature. You have Proverbs that has everything worked out. Like if you just do this, then you have Ecclesiastes, which is like, I don't know about all that. And then it seems like Job is a combination of those two, where it's like, hey, this is a story about how this works out.
The antagonist and the person.
Yeah. And so like that's kind of how I'm seeing it at the moment. All right. Well, okay, let's do 25, 26, 27. Yeah, we'll do those. That's probably all we'll be able to get through today. Okay, so our English Bibles do not say this. So take this with a grain of salt. But the Hebrews here, in my Jewish study Bible, they said something kind of interesting. They said that because Bildad's chapter 25 is so short, that they think it's actually Bildad talking in 26 as well.
Wow.
And where they're getting that is if you look at 26 verse 2, it's singular.
You help the powerless.
Yeah, and Job is always plural because he's talking to his friends, and that's where they get that. None of my English translations. I didn't look at this one. None of my English translations did that. Let's see, what is this? 25. Let me see if this has a note. This would have the note if it did. It does. See, this doesn't either. So take it with a grain of salt. All right, like take it. None of the English translations are going that direction with it, but like I had the same thing Ed Furness just said. We're like, oh, like that. Like I did that same reaction. So we will read 25, 26, and 27. Here we go. So we'll share the screen here. All right, here we go.
Then Bildad the Shuhite answered,
Dominion and fear belong to him. He makes peace in his high places. Is there any number to his armies? Upon whom does his light not rise? How then can man be righteous before God? Or how can he be pure who is born of a woman? If even the moon does not shine, and the stars are not pure in his sight, how much less man who is a maggot, and a son of man who is a worm?
Very short, very short.
But Job answered,
How have you helped him who is without power? How have you saved the arm that has no strength? How have you counseled one who has no wisdom? And how have you declared sound advice to many? To whom have you uttered words, and whose spirit came from you? The dead tremble, those under the waters and those inhabiting them. Sheol is naked before him, and destruction has no covering. He stretches out the north over empty space. He hangs the earth on nothing. He binds up the water in his thick clouds, yet the clouds are not broken under it. He covers the face of his throne and spreads his cloud over it. He drew a circular horizon on the face of the waters, at the boundary of light and darkness. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his rebuke. He stirs up the sea with his power, and by his understanding he breaks up the storm. By his spirit he adorned the heavens. His hand pierced the fleeing serpent. Indeed, these are the mere edges of his ways, and how small a whisper we hear of him. But the thunder of his power, who can understand? God lives, who has taken away my justice, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter. As long as my breath is in me and the breath of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. Far be it from me that I should say you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. May my enemy be like the wicked, and he who rises up against me like the unrighteous. For what is the hope of the hypocrite? Though he may gain much, if God takes away his life. Will God hear his cry when trouble comes upon him? Will he delight himself in the Almighty? Will he always call on God? I will teach you about the hand of God. What is with the Almighty, I will not conceal. Surely all of you have seen it. Why then do you behave with complete nonsense? This is the portion of a wicked man with God, and the heritage of oppressors received from the Almighty. If his children are multiplied, it is for the sword, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. Those who survive him shall be buried in death, and their widows shall not weep. Though he heaps up silver like dust and piles up clothing like clay, he may pile it up, but the just will wear it, and the innocent will divide the silver. He builds his house like a moth, like a booth which a watchman makes. The rich man will lie down, but not be gathered up. He opens his eyes, and he is no more. Terrors overtake him like a flood. A tempest steals him away in the night. The east wind carries him away, and he is gone. It sweeps him out of his place. It hurls against him and does not spare. He flees desperately from its power. Men shall clap their hands at him, and shall hiss him out of his place.
Okay. So chapter 28 and following, I think is Job's kind of response to the fourth friend comes in. So it's kind of a summary. And so that's kind of, we'll do that next week. And so I did anything stand out? I mean, that's with this, the kind of made you think here in 25, 26, and 27.
I like the way in all through this area where they talk, so many natural things they talk about. So many
natural things. Like, what do you mean by natural?
Yeah, think of nature.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Animals and reads like poetry and it's pretty really.
and we're going to see that when God starts talking. Like he takes Job on this big tour of everything.
What does your Jewish Bible say? Chapter 26, verse 12.
Verse
By
12.
his power he turned up the sea.
Let me see if it says anything interesting about that.
26, 12.
The reading.
Well, it says on the note here, it says stilled, the verb raga, ironically has the opposite meaning as well. Rahab.
That's what I was questioning, because my Bible has it, by his wisdom he cut Rahab to pieces, but this didn't say that.
Okay, so 12.
26, 12.
He stirs up the sea, and he breaks up in the storm.
Yeah.
And so then your Bible has it.
By his wisdom he cut Rahab to pieces.
Okay. So it's
struck down.
Struck down by law.
all right. Well, look here. They're pushing me. We're going deeper, and they're pushing me to another chapter where I guess this happened before. 9:3. Is that what it said? This also happens in Isaiah 51:15. Same words. 9:13.
This one says, like Leviathan, Rahab is the name of a sea monster.
9:13, God does not restrain his anger. Even the cohorts of Rahab cowered at his feet.
So they call Rahab?
The same word.
Yeah, Rahab's. Yeah.
And it refers back to Job 26:12. And Isaiah 30.
Yeah. Let's see here. It pushed me to here for a translator's note, but I see what it is. B. Yeah, a primeval monster is what it's calling him.
Sea monsters.
Yeah. And there goes my sea and the monsters within it and all that stuff. Like it's like it keeps on. People, when they first hear it, people think I'm crazy, but you keep digging and it's everywhere. Like that's okay. So 12, his power is he stilled in the sea and struck, and his skill, he struck down Rahab. So like that's just another. It's like a big sea monster. Okay, and that's the same idea that we'll get into with a lot Leviathan too. Like that's
the sea monster.
Yeah. And so the way that I've always understood, and we're not to that point yet, but I think it's helpful to talk about it here. Is the way I always have understood Leviathan and Job is that God is building up in God's talk to Job. He's building up a case of all the scary things that Job is scared of. So he's building it up, and it eventually builds up to Leviathan, which is the most scary thing. And the way God puts it in Job is that Job, I can keep. He goes, can you keep this as a pet for your girls? And that's basically what God says is I keep the scariest thing that you can think of as a pet for my girls. It's kind of the way it's said a little bit different than that, of course, but that's kind of my translation. We'll get to that. But when they start talking about these things, like think about how they're using that Rahab there, that it's kind of this thing that's just completely untamed and all that. And if you think about it, and if we go kind of allegorical with this whole thing, that's kind of Job's retort is like, this suffering is just untamed. And, like none of this makes sense, and his friends are trying to make sense of it too. And they're like, you've done something, Job, like that's and like that's, and then Job himself is like, no, this doesn't make any sense. And all of that. And I'm wondering if that's kind of a clever way of kind of talking about it. I don't know.
I'm glad we don't feel like that today, because everybody that has an illness would think, what did I do to
Oh man. Well, that's
there are those who do.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that still feel that way. Well, and I get into it every now and then. But I'm amazed at the amount of people that come up to me and they're scared about doing just the smallest thing wrong. Like they're like, well, if we do it just like this, won't God be upset? And that always makes me very, very sad, but it provides an opportunity for gospel there.
Yeah.
But it kind of surprises me. And it really seems like Job's friends have that. And it seems like Job is kind of dancing around it too. But yeah, that's kind of where we are today. What we have coming up in the future is we have Job's kind of summary of everything that has happened kind of so far. And then we have Elihu, the fourth friend, that comes in and kind of chastises Job's other friends. And then we have the Lord come in. So we probably have another 3 weeks here in Job. Yeah, we'll say a prayer real quick before we end. Jesus, we thank you that you've gathered us all together. We thank you for the scriptures and the honesty of Job and the book. Lord, help us to wrestle with it, that we may wrestle with you and have a firmer confidence and faith in you as we come out of it. So thank you, Jesus, and continue to heal all of our hurts, both of heart and physical, and that we would continue to have long life here. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Good deal.
Thank you.